It started with a drone shot over the Nevada desert, cracked earth, shimmering heat, the echo of an announcer's voice calling it the last great treasure hunt of our time. Horizon Tech's CEO, with his perfect teeth and astronaut haircut, stood on a polished black stage and held up a cube the size of a coffee mug. Inside it was nothing, but he claimed that somewhere, buried under rock, time, and forgotten coordinates, there was a gold nugget the size of a human head. The challenge? Find it and keep it. The only rule: the nugget was not hidden by human hands. Nature put it there. Horizon Tech just knew where it was, and would only confirm a true find. The prize wasn't money. It was glory. Proof of genius. An open challenge to the smartest, boldest, and most unrelenting minds alive. They came in suits and sandals from universities and bunkers, with drones and LiDAR and AI-enhanced metal detectors. 25 experts, all contracted by Horizon Tech for the initial sweep. Among them, a Nobel-winning geologist, a team of former NSA cryptanalysts, and a self-taught Australian prospector with 3 gold teeth and 1 million Instagram followers. And they failed, all of them. In precisely 99 days, the company published a brutal report. 0 credible leads. The nugget remained undiscovered. The experts, quietly shuttled away, refused comment. Speculation spread. Was it all a hoax? A marketing stunt? A test of AI's limits? Most people moved on, but not him. He had no name, not anymore. He answered to Shu because of the way he carried his left sneaker slung over his shoulder with a belt. Nobody remembered when he arrived in Ely, Nevada. Some said he'd been dropped off by a freight train. Others swore he just was. He lived behind the rusting billboard on Route 93, near the dead gas station, eating expired granola bars and talking to birds like they were old colleagues. People crossed the street when they saw him. Carla, the night waitress at Bertie's diner, was the only one who didn't. She called him Professor when she handed him leftovers. She didn't know why. Shu had heard about the Nugget weeks. After the contest ended, from a broken AM radio that crackled to life during a windstorm, a pirate station out of Tonopah replayed the CEO's speech in a mocking loop. The voice, warped by static, said, "If you're so smart, then find it." Shu stopped breathing. Something in the cadence, the phrasing. It wasn't a taunt. It was a trigger. That night, he broke into the dumpster behind the library and pulled out what was left of a tourist map of Nevada. Crumpled, coffee-stained. A child had drawn circles in red crayon, one of them landing right near the Ruby Mountains. Shu stared at it for hours, then tore off the piece with the red circle and folded it into his coat. In the days that followed, his routines changed. He no longer muttered nonsense. He spoke in half-sentences, referencing coordinates and drift, patterns and slope-tilt variants. He scavenged objects with purpose: mirrors, wires, rusted compasses, an old Polaroid camera. Every morning he watched the sunrise from a fixed point, writing something in the dirt with a stick, then brushing it away before noon. Carla noticed first. "You building a time machine, Professor?" she joked. He didn't answer, just looked. At her, eyes clearer than she'd ever seen. "I remembered something," he said, "about maps." She offered him a ride the next day. He declined, but he let her follow him at a distance, on foot, up the dry hill behind the mine. There she saw it, a grid etched into the earth with pebbles spanning 10 feet, each quadrant marked with a hand-drawn symbol. "This is where they all got it wrong," he said. "They looked forward. The Nugget's behind us." Behind what? History. When she asked what he meant, he only said, "The earth remembers. People forget." Word spread, slowly at first, a TikTok clip from a passing hiker showing the strange rock grid, a Reddit thread titled, "Local Madman Solves Billion-Dollar Mystery." The video hit 1 million views. Journalists sniffed around. Horizon Tech issued a dismissive press release. "The challenge was concluded," it said. "No further attempts will be validated." But something about the man unnerved them. Not just the symbols. It was the calm. The way he knew things no one told him. Someone recognized him from an old conference photo. International Cartographic Symposium, 2003. Dr. Andrew Shoemaker. Tenured. Celebrated. Missing for over a decade after A nervous breakdown in the Yukon. Now just Shu. And Shu was walking. Always walking. A spiral path through the desert mapped in his mind, retracing lines only he could see. He carried no water. He sang to himself in Greek. He stared at cloud formations like they were texts. And when the first piece of evidence surfaced, a small shard of gold-glint quartz left on a cactus as if deliberately placed, Carla took a photo, posted it, went viral. Now the world watched, but Shu didn't watch the world. He watched the shadows. He whispered to the rocks. He dreamed of oceans in the desert, and when asked finally by a CNN correspondent if he truly believed the nugget was real, he said only, "It's not about the nugget. It's about who's willing to see it." The next day he vanished into the basin behind the Ruby Ridge, carrying only his stick, his coat, and a soup can label with a map scribbled on the back. Carla found the can the next morning, fluttering, in the wind. On it, a single sentence, "If you are so smart, then find it." But this time it was written in his handwriting. By the time Carla found the can, the desert was already beginning to reclaim his tracks. The wind had brushed away the signs of Shu's footsteps, leaving only the label curled against a rock, its ink half faded but legible enough. She picked it up with the same care one might use to handle a wounded bird. The handwriting was unmistakably, his spidery, sharp, precise, despite the tremor that sometimes gripped his hand. It was more than a message, it was an invitation. She folded the label and tucked it into her apron, returned to the diner, and closed early for the first time in years. There was something in her gut. Not quite fear, but something adjacent. A pressure, a gravity, like the center of something had shifted, and she was caught in the pull. Shu had said something the night before, almost a whisper, like it wasn't meant for her at all. The gold doesn't glint until you stop looking for it. She'd laughed, but he hadn't smiled. Inside the diner's storeroom, Carla laid out the objects she'd collected from him over the past week, almost by accident. A crumpled napkin with a sketched sun and a series of angles, a shard of glass with numbers etched by hand, a broken GPS with its screen smashed, but the internal memory still intact. She plugged the GPS into her laptop, surprised when the drive mounted instantly. A single file, elysium.txt. It was a string of coordinates, but they didn't make sense. Not all at once. They spanned miles, forming no obvious pattern. She stared, cross-referencing with Google Earth, squinting at topographical overlays. The desert looked like skin under a microscope, grooved, dry, cracked, yet symmetrical in ways that defied logic. And then she noticed the points, when connected, in a certain sequence formed the shape of an eye. Not a perfect one, but distinct, an iris, a pupil, even lashes made from the spines of nearby mountain ridges. That's when the memory returned. Shu had drawn that eye in the dirt behind the gas station weeks ago, muttering about topological vision and seeing through sediment. She printed the map. The next morning she drove. The desert was merciless but familiar. Her old Toyota rattled like a loose jaw, the AC long dead, the suspension protesting every bump. She reached the first coordinate by noon. Nothing there but dust and a single yucca tree, twisted into a shape like a man hunched in prayer. Beneath it, wedged between two stones, she found a mirror. It was antique, silver-backed, oval, the kind you'd see on a vanity from the 1800s. Etched along the edge in tiny, perfect letters were the words, "Reflected, not revealed." Shu's mind had not unraveled. It had simply bent around a reality no one else was seeing. Each location on the map offered something similar. An object, always mundane, always old. A matchbox from a Las Vegas casino that had closed in the 1970s. A glass marble with a single gold thread inside it. A photograph of a cave painting, its reverse annotated in French. All these things had one thing in common. Their placement felt intentional. And though Carla had started with skepticism, each find chipped away at it. Doubt crumbled, replaced by a curiosity that gripped her tighter than fear ever could. She wasn't following a madman. She was retracing the movements of a mind that remembered things differently, perhaps better, than anyone else. 2 days later, She found him. He was camped inside a dried-out drainage tunnel beneath an overpass that hadn't seen a car in years. His beard had grown longer, and he'd fashioned a necklace from pieces of copper wire and bottle caps. He was scribbling something on the tunnel wall with charcoal, speaking in a mixture of English and what sounded like Latin. She didn't speak, just waited. He paused, sensing her presence, then turned. "Did you see it?" he asked. "The eye?" she said. He nodded once. "We're close." She sat beside him, dust coating her jeans, and said, "You left clues. Why?" Shu blinked slowly. "To prove that memory is a map. Not just for places, but for truths. The Nugget, it's where all our timelines used to meet. Before we forgot," Carla frowned. "Are you saying time broke?" "Perception did. The experts, they looked for gold. I'm looking for convergence." He stood, brushing off his coat, and retrieved a rusted compass from his coat pocket. It spun erratically until he held it against his chest. Then it stilled, pointing not north but toward the jagged ridgeline in the distance. She hesitated. "So, what's really out there?" Shu smiled, but not with joy. "Proof that we've all been standing in the wrong place." They walked for 3 hours in silence. At the base of the ridge they found an old fence, barbed wire long rusted, with a wooden sign so weather-worn that only 2 letters remained. ZA. A military test zone, maybe, or a warning. The gate hung open, almost beckoning. Beyond it the land changed. The rock shimmered slightly, as if coated with a film of heat that didn't come from the sun. Shu began humming, a low melody that Carla recognized from the radio station, the pirate one that had first played the contest's recording. It wasn't a coincidence. At sunset, they reached a plateau, and there, half buried in sand and time, was the entrance to something carved into the rock itself. Not a cave, but a corridor, straight lines, impossible geometry. Above the entrance, a single phrase had been etched in English. "Only the forgotten may remember." Carla turned to him, heartbeat stuttering. "What is this?" Shu was trembling, not from fear but reverence. "It's where they found it first, long before Horizon Tech, long before even maps." "And the Nugget?" His eyes gleamed. "It's not just gold, it's a record of what we used to be." The air shifted, cold, unnatural. From deep inside the corridor something glinted, not brightly, but steadily. A dull gleam, as if the rock itself was remembering. Carla stepped forward, but a sound behind them made her freeze. A click, metal on metal. They turned. A man stood at the fence line, partially shadowed, holding something heavy and black in his hand. A geologist Carla recognized from the press photos during the original contest. One of the 25 experts. He spoke only once. "You shouldn't have come here." Then the sun dropped below the horizon, and everything went dark. Darkness in the desert is absolute. No neon bleed from cities, no distant headlights, just the silent, suffocating press of night, stitched with the occasional whisper of wind through dead brush, and the chirp of insects too stubborn to die. Carla's breath hitched as the silhouette at the fence took a step forward, gun still, lowered but unmistakable. She didn't know his name, only his face, the tight-lipped geologist who'd once lectured on tectonic plate displacement, and now stood like a ghost resurrected by unfinished business. Shu, by contrast, didn't flinch. "You missed something," he said, voice measured. The man's eyes narrowed. "You're not supposed to be here." "We are," Shu replied, tapping his chest once, "because we're the only ones who don't need to be." Carla felt something, ancient hanging between the 3 of them, a presence in the dust. The expert, his name might have been Ellis or Elson, held the weapon with a hesitance that betrayed his fear. He hadn't come here to kill, he'd come to stop. "You think you're the only one who cracked it?" The man spat. "We all saw the patterns, we all followed the clues, but they weren't clues, they were warnings, dead ends designed to kill you slowly." "You followed machines," Shu said. "I followed memory." "No," Ellis snapped. "You followed madness." Then, without another word, he turned and disappeared into the dark, the click of his boots on the gravel receding, like a threat deferred. Carla waited until the sound vanished, her heart slowing from thunder to tremor. Shu was already walking again, deeper into the rock corridor. She followed. Inside, the air was cool and dry, like the breath of a crypt. The walls were too smooth, unnaturally so, as if something beyond tools had carved them. Light filtered, faintly from above, perhaps from cracks in the stone ceiling, casting thin ribbons of illumination that shimmered faintly when touched. Dust particles danced in patterns, spiraling rather than floating. She noticed them reacting to her movement. No, to Shu's. "Do you see them?" he whispered. She nodded slowly. "They're tracking you. They're remembering me." Carla said nothing. Further in, the corridor widened into a chamber, a dome-shaped hollow, not large but perfect in its symmetry. In the center stood a stone plinth, atop which rested what looked at first like a boulder. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw it was too metallic, too irregular. The gold was not shiny, it was dull, a deep aged luster that made her think of something pulled from the earth before the concept of value even existed. She stepped closer. The nugget pulsed with warmth, not heat, warmth, like it had a heartbeat. Like it was watching. "This isn't gold," she said. "It is," Shu murmured. "And it isn't. It's what gold was before we named it, before we priced it. This nugget, it's the Earth's last memory." He reached out and placed his palm on its surface. The dust in the air froze. Then, movement. The chamber darkened, despite no apparent light source dimming. The walls rippled, slightly like the skin of something breathing. And then, with a sound like a sigh, the chamber filled with images, not projected but impressed upon them in their minds. Carla gasped. She saw Shu as a child, in a field, mapping stars. Saw him again, older, drawing maps for war zones, maps that guided missiles, then broken, then lost. She saw Ellis, sitting in a boardroom yelling at someone about ethics, then fired, drinking, obsessing, writing equations in blood on his garage wall. She saw herself, younger, holding a child's hand, then letting go. A hospital room, a silent monitor, then endless nights of coffee and motionless waitressing. "This nugget," Shu said softly, "is a mirror of meaning. That's why Horizon Tech couldn't find it. You don't discover it. It finds you." Carla backed away. The images faded. Outside, a gust of wind howled. Suddenly, Ellis was back. He stepped into the chamber with a flashlight in one hand and the gun in the other. But his expression had changed. Something had cracked. His eyes were rimmed red, but dry. "I touched it," he whispered. 2 days ago, before you." Carla's breath caught. "What did it show you?" Ellis didn't blink. "Nothing." Shu tilted his head. "Because you brought nothing." Ellis raised the gun. "You're wrong," he said. "It's not a memory, it's a trap. It feeds on delusion. You think you found it? You think you're special?" "I think," Shu said quietly, "that it showed me what I lost." Ellis's hand shook. The gun didn't fire. Instead, he turned it around, offering it to Shu handle first. "I want to forget," he said. Shu didn't take it. "You already have." Ellis dropped the weapon. It hit the stone with a soft clatter. "I'm done," he said, and walked out back into the dark. Not fast, not slow, just away. Silence returned. Carla turned to Shu. "What now?" He looked down at the nugget. "Now we bury it. What? If the world sees this," he said, "they'll turn it into something it isn't. A myth, a product, a god. We were meant to find it, not to share it." "You're serious?" He nodded. "I'm not the man I was when I first mapped the soul world. Back then I thought everything could be known, labeled, sold. But this is sacred." Carla hesitated. "So we're just going to leave it?" "No, we're going to hide it, the way it hid itself, in patterns, in dust, in the memory of someone willing to be forgotten." Outside, the wind was picking up again, a storm gathering in the distance. Carla helped him gather rocks. Together, in silence, they sealed the chamber entrance. Not fully, just enough. Nature would do the rest. Time would erase the rest. As they hiked back to her truck, Shu stopped. At the ridge. He turned once and smiled. Not at her, not at the world, but at the memory of having been found. The storm hit at dawn, sliding across the desert like a veil of ghosts. Not lightning, not thunder, just wind. Endless wind. It scraped against the skin, howled through the mesquite, and carried with it the kind of cold that didn't belong. In Nevada this time of year. Carla's fingers trembled as she turned the key in the ignition, the Toyota coughing awake like it resented being disturbed. Shu sat beside her, staring out the window, eyes unfocused, murmuring something about vectors and fault lines as if the storm itself had a geometry. They drove east, away from the ridge, the buried chamber now nothing more than a secret shared between two people who barely knew each other and somehow knew too much. Carla didn't speak until they reached the edge of the nearest town, a cluster of shuttered shops and gas stations long out of service. A rusted sign read, Pinion Ridge, Pop 108. Though Carla doubted the number was still accurate, she pulled over near an old service station where a faded vending machine buzzed quietly under a corrugated awning. "We need to talk," she said. Shu didn't answer. He opened the glove box instead and removed the soup can label she had tucked there earlier. He unfolded it, his thumb tracing the curve of the red-inked circle like it was a rosary bead. "Think there's another one," he said. Carla blinked. "Another what?" "Another convergence point. This map, this isn't just about the Nugget. It's a pattern of intersections. The chamber wasn't the end. It was the first coordinate. The last one is here." He tapped the map. The ink had bled slightly, but the coordinate was still legible. A point far north, deeper into the restricted zones, the kind not even horizon techs. Drones dared map completely. "You said we were done," she whispered. "You said we had to bury it." "I was wrong," he said too quickly. "Or maybe I just didn't see it yet. Carla, this isn't over." The way he said her name stopped her breath. He rarely used it. Until now, she wasn't sure he even remembered it. "This isn't about the Nugget anymore," she said. "No," he agreed, "it's about what was left behind." She hesitated. "Then who buried the Nugget in the first place?" Shu smiled faintly. "No one buried it. It was forgotten. The desert doesn't hide things, it just waits." They refueled with warm sodas and a single gas station sandwich, split in silence. Then they drove again. North, always north, until the desert changed. The colors deepened. The sky went gray-blue. The ground grew rockier, less sand, more jagged cuts in the earth that looked like veins from above. There were signs, U.S. government property, no trespassing, some torn in half by time or defiance. Carla kept driving. Shu began to draw again, not in a notebook, but directly on the dashboard using a burnt matchstick. A triangle intersecting a spiral. A line that curved, then broke. The same symbol he had etched in the sand days before. They stopped when the road turned to gravel. From here it would be on foot. Carla packed light. Water, the map, the mirror from the yucca tree. She wasn't sure why she'd kept it, but something told her it still had purpose. Shu brought nothing but a compass and the broken GPS unit. 3 miles in, the terrain changed again. Flat rocks now layered like geological sediment, but laid out in grids, unnatural precision like someone had tiled the land with stone. Then a sound, a soft ping, electronic and brief. Shu stopped. He knelt, opening the GPS. The screen flickered, to life despite the shattered display. It showed a single dot, blinking, the final coordinate. Carla's voice was barely a whisper. "It's underground, isn't it?" Shu nodded. "Always is." They searched until sunset, found a fissure near the base of a low ridge, small enough to miss, large enough to crawl through. The descent was steep but short, leading to a hollow chamber not unlike the first. But this one was different. The walls were covered in writing, not carvings, burns. The stone itself had been scorched into letters, symbols, entire paragraphs in languages neither of them fully recognized. Greek, Arabic, binary code, fragments of journal entries. One sentence repeated often. "We tried to erase the sky." The center of the chamber was no nugget, no plinth. There was a chair, metal, rusted, bolted into the stone, and resting on the seat, something wrapped in cloth. Shu approached. His fingers hovered above the object before pulling the cloth back. It wasn't gold. It was a reel of magnetic tape. Old, military issue, marked with a single red number, 26. He picked it up. Then a voice echoed through the chamber, not from speakers. Not from the tape, from the stone itself. You were not the first to hear this, Carla stumbled back, heart pounding. Shu didn't move, the voice repeated. You were not the first to hear this. The tape began to unwind itself. A projector, buried in the wall, flickered to life. And images emerged, splashed against the stone ceiling. Satellite maps, heat signatures, patterns in tectonic movement, then names, faces, of every expert who had joined the original contest, all 25, including Ellis. Then a 26th face. Shu, Carla gasped. You were on the original team. He didn't blink. I was the first one to leave. They said I broke, but I saw something in the data no one else wanted to acknowledge. What? That it wasn't a contest, it was a containment. Horizon Tech didn't want the Nugget found, they wanted it forgotten. The reel spun faster. New images, scans of something buried deeper than the chamber. A structure, metallic, circular, glowing. Is that... Shu nodded. It's not a nugget, it's a node. A node of what? Of memory. The desert's not just geography, it's storage. The final frame of the projection, a human brain, then static. The tape stopped, and from the far side of the chamber, a door opened, metallic, airlocked. Inside, the gleam of something unmistakable, real gold, but this time shaped into a cube, floating. Above a pedestal, Carla took a step forward. Behind her, the door slammed shut. Shu didn't move. They're going to come now, he said. Who? Horizon Tech, or what's left of it. They've been watching, waiting to see who'd get this far. She turned to him, panic rising. Then why bring me? Because I needed someone the desert hadn't already erased. Lights in the walls clicked on. A siren began to wail, dull, rhythmic, growing louder, and above them the sand began to shift. The cube dissolved like it had never been real, just a trick of light pretending to be substance. Carla barely saw it happen. One blink and it was gone, unraveling into a thread of gold light that coiled once around Shu's chest and vanished into him. No sound, no glory, just a man collapsing onto cold rock with nothing but dust for witnesses. She was at his side before she realized she'd moved. His skin was pale but his eyes open, locked somewhere far off. His lips moved, whispering to something she couldn't hear. Then the sirens began. Not loud, not even real maybe. But they rang through her spine, rhythmic, surgical, designed to trigger something ancient in the brain. Fear, obedience, retreat. A door opened in the rock behind them, metal, smooth, deliberate. Ellis stood in the frame. He looked worse now, eyes. Sunken skin waxy. Behind him 2 shadows moved, suits, no names, faces that didn't blink. You shouldn't have touched it, Ellis said. Carla rose slowly, still between Shu and the world. He didn't touch anything. It chose him. One of the suits stepped forward. Containment breached, subject. Reactivated, protocol initiates now. Their voices were too flat, too clean. Something off. Manufactured. Shu sat up. His voice had changed, deeper, slower, like he was remembering how to speak. This isn't a protocol, he said. It's a burial. You don't understand what you've done, Ellis said. Shu smiled. Neither do you. The suits raised a small device, cube-shaped, humming. Carla didn't think. She reached into her coat and pulled out the mirror. The one from the yucca tree. She held it up like a weapon. Light caught it. Reflected. Split. The device sparked, then melted in the suit's hands. One of them took a step back. The other disintegrated. Quietly, like a photograph burning from the inside. Ellis ran. Carla grabbed Shu. They moved together, limping through the metal door, back into the open air. Dawn was creeping in over the hills, but it wasn't comforting. The desert looked wrong. Shadows too long. horizon bending slightly like the world had forgotten its shape. Shu collapsed near the rocks, breathing hard. She crouched beside him. "Is it over?" she asked. He looked at her, eyes clearing for just a moment. "No," he said, "but now we remember what they tried to erase." Then he passed out. She looked back toward the ridge. The metal door was gone. The entrance was sealed again. Like none of it had ever happened, except in her hand she still held the mirror, and in Shu's coat pocket, poking out just slightly, was the magnetic tape. Reel 26. She took it, didn't rewind it, didn't press play, not yet, just tucked it into her bag and whispered more to herself than anyone, "Next time we bury them," and walked away. They stayed in the motel off Route 50 for 3 days. Room 8. Blinds always drawn. The hum of the old refrigerator filled the silences neither of them cared to break. Shu spent most of the time seated by the window, staring out like he was watching the desert breathe. Carla tried to sleep, but couldn't. Her dreams were different. Now static-laced memories of things she hadn't lived, names she'd never spoken, places she was sure didn't exist. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was never small talk. "They built their empire on forgetting," he said once without turning from the window. "Layered history like sand over a body." She didn't ask who they were. She didn't need to. The reel, 26, remained untouched on the nightstand. It looked benign, dusty, outdated, but she didn't dare play it. Not anymore. Knowing was a weight. Some knowledge didn't illuminate. It buried. On the 4th morning, Shu was gone. No noise, no sign of departure. Just the dent in the mattress where he'd slept, and beside it the small mirror she'd carried since the beginning, now wrapped inside the soup label map. She unrolled it slowly. A new sentence had been scribbled on the back in Shu's familiar hand. "The last nugget is in the forgetting." She read it twice, then once more. It wasn't a riddle, it was a release. That afternoon she returned to Bertie's diner. The place was quieter than she remembered. Same cracked vinyl booths, same squeaky fan. The waitress behind the counter, new. Girl young, probably just passing through. Didn't recognize her. Carla ordered black coffee, drank it in silence. Before leaving, she wrote on a napkin, "We found it, but it wasn't gold. It was what gold used to mean." She folded the napkin and tucked it under the sugar tray. Nobody stopped her as she walked out. The desert was quiet on the drive back, a kind of final silence. She reached the edge of the ridge at sunset, the sky molten behind the broken hills. The place where the chamber had been was gone, sealed, maybe buried deeper by wind, time, or intention. Nature was good at closing doors. When people weren't looking, she got out of the truck holding the reel in one hand. The magnetic tape inside still ticked faintly when she moved. It felt heavier than it should, not physically, historically. She didn't want to know what was on it anymore, not because she feared the truth, but because she'd already lived with lies long enough. She walked 50 steps into the flat, cracked earth, dug a shallow hole with her hands and buried it. Not as a secret, as a choice, no monument, no marker, just dust. When she stood again, the wind picked up behind her like a breath being held too long. The sky was dimming, stars coming out one by one, like old wounds blinking open. She didn't look back. There was nothing left to look at. Somewhere behind. Shu was probably walking still, or not. Maybe he'd vanished into the dust he understood better than any man alive. Maybe he was part of the land now. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. The nugget had never been gold. It had never been currency. It was memory, pure and unsellable. And once remembered, it demanded something in return. For her, that was letting go. As she reached the truck, she whispered aloud, just once, just to herself. Some treasures aren't meant to be found, just survived. Then she drove. No destination, just away. The mirror, still wrapped in the label, rested on the seat beside her. She didn't touch it again, just let it ride with her into the night, because some reflections aren't meant to be stared at, only carried.